Hey, welcome to Pretty Well. Do you want to get to the root causes of your health concerns? Do you find yourself Googling, why do I feel this way? And looking for solutions to feel great again? I'm Lisa Smith, and I too felt exhausted, achy, and like I was aging too quickly. I wanted to look and feel like myself again and spent way too much time and money going to practitioners, even functional medicine practitioners, and not getting results. So I became a functional medicine practitioner myself and learned how to identify and fix root causes to health issues. The good news is there is so much you can do to reclaim your wellness. In this podcast, you'll find quick, simple, and evidence-based guidance that you can easily fit into your day so your energy will be soaring, your mind clear, and your skin will return to its beautiful glow. Let's dive in. Being here today.
Thank you so much, Lisa. It's a pleasure. My whole career revolves around guts and butts, and it's an important conversation no one wants to have.
Yeah. Well, I think all of us, if we're being honest, have to deal with guts and butts at different times of life. So I have really been looking at the work you're doing and the progress you're making, and you take a different approach, which I truly appreciate. So let's start with a little bit of backstory. How did you get started in this space, and why are you passionate about guts and butts?
Well, one, I'm male, but when it came down to illness, it's something I dealt with my entire life, and I didn't even know I did when the time was happening. My mom went through it over a course of her lifetime. She's had constant gut issues. So did my dad. And as we started watching this sort of transpire over time, I remember being 11 years old and she actually perforated a bowel. So a little tiny hole formed and we didn't know it was happening. She went upstairs and she felt sick, laid down in bed like she would when she has abdominal pain, but it kept getting worse. And that night she was rushed into emergency surgery. And the surgeon said another 2 or 3 hours and she might not have made it because she
Oh
was
my.
leaking toxic colon contents into her abdominal cavity. And that almost killed her. And my dad had gut issues his entire life. I remember that being a mess ongoing and, going on road trips and everyone stopping at the bathroom. And it just was a thing. And again, when I was in my teens, I was told I had IBS. It's just genetic, which we now know that's an absolute farce. But long and short, my gut got so bad when I was in my early mid 20s. I was having 15 bowel movements a day, 10-minute transit times. I mean, I'd eat and I'm in the bathroom in 10 minutes with irritated gut. I lost 25, 30 pounds, ADHD, anxiety, manic episodes, panic attacks, depression, so severe, like suicidal ideation, where I was planning it out because my brain was so messed up and so inflamed from everything going on. But I'm not depressed. My chemistry was just so messed up. It took me to that point. And that's what brain,
Brain was on fire.
it,
Yeah.
it was exactly. And I've gone through there. I've had blood in the stool, mucus, you name it. And I was able to completely reverse and undo that. And by just looking at it, not accepting genetics and taking the pills the doctors gave me to manage my symptoms, and by critically thinking, and it's not that hard. Someone might see what I'm doing. Go, that's amazing. I wish I could do that. You can. It's not that hard. We just have to take a different lens and stop accepting diseases like this or inflammatory processes as being, quote, genetic.
Mm. Boy, I love that. First of all, I just have to say an aside, I bet those road trips were a lot of fun. Your
Oh,
stuff.
yeah. The car constantly smelled like farts and everyone always had a donut or a coffee in their hand.
Got to stop again. Wait, did we not just stop? Like, yeah, that.
Every time, every time. Thank God for the 401. There's back in Ontario, there's a road stop every 15 minutes.
And you know them well, I assume, but
Regrettably, yeah. I'm
yeah,
trying to
yeah.
block it out though. I'm suppressing that memory.
I got you. I got your little repressed stop action there. Well, let's talk about that because that is something. Oh, the vast majority of people who go to their doctor are told, you probably have a genetic predisposition. Especially, you would have been told that both of your parents suffered from this. So you would have that really would have been a storyline for quite a long time until you decided to look at it differently. So, how did you make the pivot to start changing from accepting that conventional medical advice that was getting you nowhere to deciding,
Mhm.
I think I can do something about this?
Hmm. It's a really good question. I already knew what worked and what didn't work without realizing I knew these things. Little
Mm.
background, when I was 19, my first job, I started as a paramedic after graduating college, 19, 20 years old. And I remember seeing a lot of the same people. I worked in a small town, village, like 500 people, rural Newfoundland. And I saw the same people over and over for the same conditions, heart issues, blood pressure issues, diabetes, whatever it was. You pick them up. I'd take them down to the hospital, my partner and I, and we'd drop them off. And then we'd see them again next week until they
Oh,
got worse and worse and one day stopped calling because they died. And
mm,
so I realized it was a sick care system. It was very reactive. Nobody was working proactively. And then in
mhm.
my early 20s, I actually left paramedics and I became a personal trainer. And there's a whole chain of events to why that happened. But long and short, here I am, this new career. And one of my first clients came to see me named Lynn, 57 years old. She was on 17 pills and a shot of insulin for breakfast. She had
Oh,
nine more pills, and that's not uncommon for Americans that age. Um, so she had nine more pills and insulin for bedtime. She slept with a CPAP machine, high blood pressure. She was on disability, like at work. She was on the list, like I can't walk up and down the stairs, so firefighters got to come save me. It was a whole to do. And by age 59, by just doing diet, lifestyle, sleep, stress management, exercising for 30 to 60 minutes 3 times a week, here she is at 59 off all but two medications. She entered her first powerlifting competition and broke a Canadian world record in her division from being on disability and 27 pills or whatever it was a day,
and
26
how
pills.
many years how many years did you help her reverse though? I mean, no, I mean prior to that.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Up to
she's been doing this
57,
since she was a little
probably
girl. Her
decades,
parents didn't
right?
eat well. 40, 50 years. Her parents didn't eat well, bad habits ingrained. She was overweight. She had a bariatric surgery done, like all this stuff. And so
Oh,
we're talking 40, 50 years unwound in 2 years. So
that's
I knew
incredible.
medicine doesn't work,
No.
but there's something about our body that it can fix itself when given the resources and the conditions to do so. So when I was going through this, I didn't even ask a doctor. 'Cause when I was, again, back when I was a paramedic before being a personal trainer, I went to the doctor in town. Well, it's genetic. Well, here's something to slow your bowels down. I had acne covering every part of my back. It's like, well, I'll try exfoliating more. They didn't tell me it was coming from my gut. My joints hurt like crazy. I was irritable all the time. I was an athlete and I ached always because my gut was causing inflammation in my body. Nobody told me this. So I didn't go to a doctor and ask them for help. I found someone at my gym who I knew was into nutrition and studying what came to be functional medicine, and they helped me through it. And since then, he's actually become my mentor. We work together now, and it's just been an amazing ride. But
Wow.
I've learned that all diseases can be reversed. Nothing is permanent, and a diagnosis is a sham.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I look at conventional medical care as being incredible for acute problems.
Yes.
Right, you break your arm, you get, something
100%.
that's acute. We've got the best we've ever had in history, but when we try to take an acute model and we try to deal with chronic issues, you know, it's a crap show, really.
Well,
It
that's
just
exactly it. Quite
doesn't
literally, it's a
work.
crap show because everyone's guts are messed up. But if we think about
Not
it,
intended, but boy, it works.
great pun. But think about it. Here's what we do. We take these chronic inflammatory issues and we treat them with acute treatment, like anti-inflammatory medications. And then we
Yeah,
treat chronic conditions acutely, chronically. We continue
exactly.
to use acute treatment on a chronic condition and wonder why no one's getting better because you're
I-
managing symptoms.
exactly. And allowing that inflammation to just spread like wildfire.
Oh,
Exactly.
yeah.
So let's talk about what do you see as the primary causes it could be bowel disease, it could be well no, let's take a step backward first because I think you and I know very well we're gut health nerds and this is our passion, but for everyone listening, let's just delineate between IBS and IBD because those get grouped together and people are like, well, I don't know. I have gut issues. I don't know what that is. So let's talk about those first. And then I'm going to ask them my next question.
I love it. I'm ready for it. So
Okay.
IBS and IBD, and this is what sort of broke the mold. Again, your doctor will say one's a diagnosis or a syndrome, irritable bowel syndrome. The other is a diagnosed genetic condition called inflammatory bowel disease. The first one is true, the second one is not. IBS is a syndrome, IBD is not genetic. That's bullshit. Here's what we're going to get into. We actually decided, wait a minute, what if these aren't two separate conditions that pop up overnight? We know about 20% of all cases of Crohn's colitis have a previous diagnosis of IBS. The excuse is, oh, well, we misdiagnosed it. So it must have been Crohn's or colitis the whole time. We missed it, but this is what it is. What we said is, no, no, no. If you wear a pair of shoes without socks and that heel gets red and it rubs and gets raw till it blisters and bleeds, it's going to get worse. So what happens in IBS is you have something that's causing irritable bowel syndrome or symptoms that get worse and worse and worse until it gets highly inflamed, pops an ulcer, starts bleeding, whatever it is. And then we say, oh, look, it's this genetic condition. No, no, no. You
Right.
don't get a blister on your heel from walking and your doctor calls it genetic. Why do we do this with a bowel that rubs raw? And so the differentiation between the conditions, IBS or irritable bowel syndrome, can be anything on a spectrum from minor bloat to constipation, diarrhea, food sensitivities, acid reflux, you name it. Something along the spectrum of my gut's not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
IBD falls under two umbrellas of Crohn's and colitis. Now,
Mm-hmm.
colitis again splits to ulcerative colitis, but ultimately it's inflammation of the large bowel. It goes in strips. So you might have one chunk at a time or long strip or even the whole bowel that's inflamed, and it can develop ulcers. But it's very surface level. It's kind of like if you fall and scrape your knee on the sidewalk. It hurts, but it's not the end of the world. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
Crohn's disease, it goes beyond the large intestine. It inflames anywhere from mouth to anus. You can get sores in your mouth, even on your bum cheeks, your esophagus, stomach, smaller, large bowel. And instead of strips, it's patches. We call these pairs patches. And they can be deep, not just surface like a scuff, but they can actually burrow with fistulas, which are like
Oh.
holes that burrow into your intestines and can get highly infected and be very, very dangerous and very deadly. So it's all a spectrum. You think about it. IBS symptoms can happen in your stomach, small or large bowel, just like Crohn's, but further along the spectrum, we have Crohn's disease. And
Mm-hmm.
we can get into, there's so many things to explore here, Lisa. I'll let you lead the charge. We can get into the four stages of disease development. We can talk about the three reasons people get sick and even break down, if you want to put the focus to why Crohn's and colitis are not autoimmune, genetic, or unknown.
Okay. Well, I want
It's
to
a can of
first,
worms. Yeah.
yeah, we might need to do multiple sessions, which would be really fun.
Sure.
But let's first talk about, I do want to talk about because I know our listeners would be really interested in why is this happening, right? So my next question was going to be, so we'll go to your second point, the three causes of disease, but specifically, what are the contributing factors to developing this gut inflammation that could lead to IBS or IBD or, anything along that spectrum?
Mhm.
But then let's really highlight the ones that we're not always hearing about because you do some really good work and bringing out things that people think, oh, I didn't think about that. So let's talk about that.
Mhm. Sure, I'd love to. So my what 13, 14 years now in healthcare across different spectrums of health, I've really distilled illness down to three umbrellas. So the first one's going to be toxins. Now that can be high blood sugar, can be toxic. Chronic stress is toxic to you. It can be pesticides, alcohol consumption, processed foods. It can be VOCs, we call volatile organic compounds, those smells from like a new car or like paint. Those are toxic to you. All right, EMFs, Wi-Fi, mold, these are all toxic to your body. And our modern world presents more toxins than ever before. So that's the first reasons humans get sick. We get something in our body that's effectively a poison. It starts to break down, fails, or inflames in a reaction to it. The second reason we get sick is deficiencies. We might be deficient of fresh air, sunlight, exercise, deficient of vitamins, minerals, amino acids, electrolytes, basic things our bodies need to thrive. We need these like a happy house plant. I need sunlight. We need fresh air. According to the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, indoor recirculated air is one of the top three or top five toxins to humans in our modern world. So open your windows, right? So we have toxins and we have deficiencies. The third thing that makes us sick is microbes. Whether we have too many good guys or too many bad guys or infections, viruses, parasites, fungal overgrowth, whatever it is, these microbes are what make us sick. But there's a fourth layer that's crept up, and this credit goes to Justin and Erica Sonnenberg from Stanford University, their theory of generational dysbiosis.
Mhm.
Dysbiosis is a term that we use to describe imbalanced gut bacteria. It's far from perfect.
Mhm.
And what ends up happening, if you think about it, Let's go back to great great grandmother pre-industrial revolution, right? Everyone's living on the land, they're farming by themselves, there's no chemicals, we're out in the sun working by hand before machines were really a thing.
Mhm.
And then industrial revolution comes along and we have more lead and more mercury and more toxins and things coming in industrial byproducts entering our world, dumped into the wastewater systems, and great grandmothers consuming these. Well, say she had 1,000 microbes. These poisons start to kill some off. So what's handed down to grandma is going to be 800 microbes. Now here we are, early 1900s, peak of antibiotics are entering just after World War One, entering World War Two. There's more chemicals, toxins, machinery, gas-powered vehicles are entering the scene, and now we have more microbe loss. So then mom or whoever is going to now get say 600. And now here she is entering 1950s, 60s. We have fast food, junk food coming in. Everyone's smoking weed over at Woodstock. Everything's great. And the body's getting more poisoned just by the nature of the world. And now she has 400 microbes left to give to you. And you give to your kids 200 microbes. And so we're losing our defenses. And just like a city that has vacancy opening up because everyone's migrating out, something else is going to migrate in. Whether it's people or raccoons, whatever it is, something's moving in that shouldn't necessarily be there. And this is
Mhm.
where infections start to happen. And this allows more toxins, more imbalances of your immune system, right? Because your gut microbiome, this ecosystem, is responsible for 90% of your neurotransmitters. That's the chemicals that, your brain needs to communicate.
Yeah.
70% of your immune cells are grown and matured inside of your gut. Hormones are balanced there. Detoxification happens. Vitamins and minerals are extracted from or even produced. Some vitamins like vitamin K made inside of your gut. And so these imbalances leave us susceptible to toxins, deficiencies, and microbial overgrowth, leading to, where we are now, where we have disease exploding.
Yeah. That's a great summary. I appreciate that, especially the generational piece. I've seen research that shows as as a mother has multiple children, each child has starts out with a poorer immune system because they have less microbial diversity, less,
Yes.
right? So that's so interesting. I hadn't thought about it
Mhm.
that way, like the generational
And
disparity.
that applies, right? I mean, if you look at even now, you get somebody who's healthy, but for some reason, it was an emergency and they do a C-section or the business of birth where they push them to a C-section because they, use Pitocin to force contractions. And that's a whole other conversation. But
Yeah.
then a mother who's unable to breastfeed or chooses not to breastfeed, your baby, the first two most important inoculations of microbes, they're already missed. And those
Yeah.
babies we know who are strictly bottle fed or are C-section are twice as likely to die from SIDS or sudden infant death syndrome. They're more
Wow.
likely to develop twice as likely. This is a meta-analysis of this data. They've looked at 19 different studies. We know that they're more likely to develop early onset diabetes, mental health issues, autism, schizophrenia, depression, anxiety, juvenile arthritis. All these diseases happen because they don't get the first seeding. And instead, compound that. What are they fed? Seed oil, glucose syrup filled baby
Yeah.
formula instead. And so we
Yes.
have what's optimal and then we have whatever else we can do instead of. And I get a lot of people who come down on me, well, I had no choice. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the way we could choose to do things the harder, inconvenient way.
Mhm.
And some women have no choice. If you can get
Right.
donor milk or there's another breastfeeding mom who like makes excess, let her breastfeed. That's
Yeah.
something you may miss out on, but it's better for your baby. Villages do it all the time. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and that's definitely an out of the box thought. I know with my first kiddo, I just did not make enough milk. I still
mhm,
breastfed, but I had to supplement.
of course.
My second one, I didn't have that situation at all. But yeah, I really fought it. And then the doctor kept saying she's not gaining weight. And I was
Yeah.
like,
But then you have to do what you have to do, and that's not your fault, Lisa.
right, exactly. The hard part for moms is we tend to think it is all our fault.
Yes.
All the things all the time, no matter what happened.
Sure.
Your skinned his knee. Oh my gosh, I should have moved the rock in the driveway. Like it's just, it's a mom, it's many moms, not every mom, but many of us kind of carry this stuff we need to unpack and, let go of. But
Oh, I'm in my 30s. My mom still blames herself for the dumb stuff I do. I get you.
it is a mom thing. It's something that we just, we need to take a look at because we don't need to be so hard on ourselves. But from a nursing standpoint, that's a great out of the box thought. For me, I never would have thought to see, is there another mama friend I have who's nursing and I could, she could pump and give. I never thought of that. That's a good thought
Donor,
process.
like milk banks are a thing. Donor, I mean, it's expensive to get donor milk, but if you have someone who's overproducing and making lots, have at her. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, that's right. So let's just talk more about what you're seeing. Like, give me an example of one of your favorite, other that you already gave us one example of one of your favorite transformation stories, but let's talk about another one. What's another one that comes to mind that they were told it was genetic, they had to be on medication all their lives? I'll give you a quick example, and then I'd love for you to unpack one with us. One of my kids, I ran GI maps on my kids, when they were younger, and one of them had fecal occult blood, relatively high, like 40. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is going on? That at that point I went to the pediatricians, that I have this test, I don't know what to do. And she said, well, let's go to Children's and have, the gastroenterology department, have them do some scopes. And so the poor little guy got a colonoscopy, an
Mm,
MRI, an endoscopy. Well, he wasn't little, but he was, later elementary, early junior high. And he's like, what are you, what's the matter with you? But they found pre-Crohn's, right?
mm,
And the doctor said, I want to put him on medication. Now he's young, for the rest, and I want to put him on medication to bring down
yeah.
the inflammation. And I said, okay, well, let's talk about that first. How long? Like 3 months, 6 months? He said, oh, no, no. He said, I don't have evidence of Crohn's, but I have evidence that there's inflammation that could contribute to Crohn's, that could cause Crohn's. So let's get him on this medication now. And how long, I asked, and he said, oh, the rest of his life. Like, you can't come off, or he could have a really big flare. And I was like, so you are telling me there's not evidence that he has Crohn's, but you want to put him on a Crohn's medication for the rest of his life, and
Wild.
he's not even a teenager yet. Really? And I said, absolutely not. But so that kind of thing, I mean, but and it's been a lot of investigative work on my end to figure out what is going on there. But let's share some with us about who you've worked with. And
Yeah, and I love that this is personal to you as well. I think it's going to make a really interesting line of questioning.
yeah.
I'll give you two cases. I I could I'm just going to the Rolodex. I'll give you two cases. They both happen to be colitis, but again, it's on the same spectrum. I look at IBS, turns to colitis, turns to Crohn's. Some people skip through that, but ultimately it's inflammation that's worse. One is generalized irritability, one is inflammation of the large intestine, one's inflammation of the whole GI. So it's a spectrum of severity. So we'll play with them in the same umbrella here. Um, let's talk about Louis. Louis was 17 years, 18 years. I think it was 56, 57 we started together. And we actually had the pleasure of joining Doug Kaufman on Know the Cause, big international TV show, to talk about his case. They just happened to be friends. Doug remembers planning Louis's funeral, praying at the foot of his bed in the hospital, expecting him to die. They planned his funeral, his family, 3 times. They thought he was going to die. And he had this for almost 2 decades. And
Oh,
we went through together. Turns out a quick, simple history because something has to happen to inflame you. Inflammation is your body healing you from something. Your doctor just doesn't ask what, they just go, oh, it's genetic. Genes don't inflame you like this. So we wound back the clock. We figured he actually had IBS. So again, early spectrum. For a number of years, things got worse and worse. And then he had his gallbladder removed. So his gallbladder developed stones. So something affected his liver, which caused sludgy toxic bile, which built up in his gallbladder, which led to them just removing it. Well, now after that, whatever was sludging up his liver is going to sludge up the rest of his system. But combine that with what ended up happening to him, his gallbladder wasn't squirting out the bile he needed, so he's maldigesting fats. He's got irritability. He's got diarrhea, which leads to hyperfermentation of some of these fats, bacterial overgrowth, which wear and tear like the heel in a shoe without socks going for a long walk. And eventually it became ulcerative colitis. And then his doctor said, well, yeah, it's a genetic condition. You have this for life. We wound back the clock, cleaned up his liver. He takes one supplement now. It's a digestive support with ox bile. It's been 4 years since I've seen him in my care. Last summer, he was out in Greece, flying around, eating, drinking, living his best life. No signs of disease for 4 years. It took us 6 months to unwind nearly 20 years of issues. 6 months. And his doctor had him on medication for life, and he almost died 3 times. So that's instance one. Instance two, that's the wear and tear. The reason I'll bring you instance two, we'll use Larissa, and you can find these videos on YouTube. Larissa was actually Curtis's client. He's the one I was referring to earlier who mentored me. But we work
Mhm.
together now, so I'll take a fraction of his credit. So
Absolutely.
anyway, Larissa and Curtis are working together. And what ended up happening, she came in, diagnosed again in 2013, really severe colitis. She had colonoscopies all throughout. They tried every drug, immunosuppressives, different steroids, you name it, nothing worked. She got a colonoscopy in September. This was September 2023. She got a colonoscopy to like, it's getting real bad. Spontaneous bleeding, really severe. My first call with Larissa, we jumped on a call to meet. She took a break halfway through. She's on the toilet while we're doing our call. Like
Oh,
spontaneous, severe, couldn't control her bowels. So
oh
here we
no.
are, September 23. She has her first scope. She and I meet in, it was March or April. So a couple months later, she had another scope. And her doctor said, "Yep, it's really severe. We're going to have to remove your bowel." And this is when she decided, you know what? I'm gonna just work with you guys because I'm on the edge here.
Mhm.
She described the pain like squirrels with razor blades running around in her intestines.
Oh my gosh.
Constant, severe, 20 plus bowel movements a day, blood mucus pain, the works. Anyway, so here we are. We started finally together in about March, April. 4 months later, she's out of the program. Symptoms are nearly gone. She gets another colonoscopy, and I'm telling you, from I have the pictures severe ulcers, inflammation, ready to fall out of her body, to perfect, healthy, pink. It looks like yours or mine. You'd never know she ever had colitis. But what ended up happening, she had a mold infection. So moldy home, moldy environment was toxic, was causing overgrowth, inflammation, immune responses, ulcers, the works. Mold is a prime environment for parasites to come in. So here she is with these 2 foot long worms coming out of her bowel. So
No
she
way.
had it's wild the stuff that comes out of people. I'm telling you. So she had an acute infection. Louis was a wear and tear over time. Larissa was a an acute infection that developed and turned to colitis that never went away. And this is where we see, I'll circle it back. We talked about the 4 stages of inflammation. Here's how it works. Number one, it's an acute inflammation, something that
Mhm.
happens and gets into your body, like the flu, like an infection. You scuff your knee, it inflames, it goes away, your body heals. That's what should
Mhm.
be happening. But if that hangs on, moldy environment like Larissa, for example, you can't get rid of it. It's just there. Or like Louis, where it gets worse and worse. This is when it now gets labeled chronic. After a year of medical intervention, no relief or minimal, it's now labeled chronic. What
Mhm.
happens when you have chronic is that disease progresses and progresses, it wears and tears and gets worse. And then we end up on stage 3 out of 4. And this is what we call immune mediated responses. In fact, the Mayo Clinic, Crohn's Colitis Foundation have downgraded these from autoimmune to immune mediated, which they still put under the autoimmune umbrella, which is a farce. If it wasn't worth nearly $40 billion a year in medication, I think they just take it off the list, right? You get rid of these immunosuppressive drugs. But anyway, here we are at stage 3, immune mediated. Your immune responses are hyperactive because, like you, when you're chronically stressed, one day you're going to snap. Your immune
Yeah.
system does that too, and it goes haywire. You have these hyperactive immune mediated responses that lead to this level of inflammation. Stage 4 is where things get scary. This is where true autoimmunity may happen if we believe autoimmunity is real, and I have a whole theory on that. But autoimmune disease, it progresses, or what we call immunodeficiency, where you're exhausted, you snap, and you just give up. Your immune
Mhm.
system just breaks down and it can no longer keep up. So, in order to fill in the gap to try to protect you, these other responses have to stay high and these ones stay low. And this is immunodeficiency. So, you have stage 1, which is acute. It should heal, it can't. It turns chronic because your body can't get rid of the thing. After a while, your immune responses go haywire and then they collapse. That's the 4 stages of autoimmune or immune mediated disease development. All of these people were told you're in stage 4 from day one. Oh, that's just what it is. They were all in stage 2 or 3. They just needed help walking back the clock. And it can
Yeah.
be done very, very easily. Crohn's, colitis, whatever.
Yeah. So let's talk about how you helped these people. It could be Louis, it could be Clarisse, it could be, or anyone. How are you, what testing are you doing? How are you helping people? Because we first need to identify and then we need to remove. If we look at the model, I love your model of toxins and deficiencies and pathogens. So if we look at your model, I put that in, it's kind of very similar to my model, just slightly different angle, remove, replace, restore. So we got to remove toxins, replace deficiencies,
You
restore
got
whatever
it.
infections are, right? So how do you let's look at your process for how do you help people begin to identify all these? pieces because everyone's very different. That moldy house, which set her up for parasites, which also caused inflammation and perforated, and intestinal hyperpermeability and all the things. Like you need someone who,
Huge.
able to put the pieces of the puzzle together.
Yeah, yeah. It starts with first changing your lens. If I can actually pull the curtain back on this one a little bit, Lisa, I'd love to go through. It'll only be a minute or two. I think to understand why and how these processes work, we need to understand that what your doctor's coming from is a wrong lens, right? They
Mhm.
say it's an autoimmune, genetic, or idiopathic, meaning unknown cause condition. And if we can dismantle the three legs of that autoimmune disease, bowel disease table for you, suddenly these five R's we're going to go through together on how we reverse this process makes a whole lot more sense.
Mm.
And it allows you to accept this as truth and fact, not rhetoric or dogma.
Mm.
So number one, your doctor says it's a genetic condition. Okay, your genes don't work in a vacuum. There is no gene that causes bowel disease at all. Nothing.
Mm.
There's correlated disease like HLAs or NOD2s or IRGMs or IL-23Rs, whatever these genes you may have. Your doctor goes, look, here's the gene you have it. No, false. Genes do not work in a vacuum. They're like a volume knob. They can turn up and express really, really dangerously or come back down and just be cool, calm, and collected. What influences genes? Well, toxins,
Mhm.
nutrients, and microbes. Back to the three reasons we get sick. We know there's a whole study called nutrigenomics on how nutrients affect your genes. Stress, environment, sunlight, exercise, they all improve or worsen genetic expression. So these genes, if they regulate your immune responses on a gut level, or they
Mhm.
regulate your bacterial control and react and kill off these guys and keep you balanced, great. But if those genes are expressing poorly, you're going to have excess inflammation, bacterial overgrowth, and toxins not being cleaned properly because your genes are being influenced poorly and can't do their job. So we can't blame your genetics. On top of that, we've seen 3,000% increase in cases since the 1950s. We had
Oh,
15 per 100,000 people diagnosed in the 1950s. Today it's 463 per 100,000.
wow.
It's doubled since the 90s. So something's
Wow.
causing it, and it's not your
Mhm.
genetics. Genetics, that would take thousands of years for genetics to express that badly. And frankly, it would weed itself out of the gene pool. So don't blame your genes. Number two, we say it's idiopathic or unknown. We know it's not. We just talked about all the reasons why you get sick, what causes your genes, etc. So let's take that off the table, right? Generational dysbiosis, you name it. The third, they say it's autoimmune. It's not. In fact, did you know that only 70% of all cases of Crohn's colitis, 50 to 70 of Crohn's disease rather, and about 70% of colitis have any antibodies at all across the board?
Wow.
So we have, let's say, 30% with no antibodies who are being treated like it's autoimmune. But I want to break this down because there's two kinds of antibodies. Imagine you are defending a castle, right? Back in medieval times, and you have bad guys, foot soldiers running up to the castle. What do? You create a specific soldier to kill a specific type of invader. So you
Yeah.
develop an archer. Perfect. Snipe them with an arrow and psh, they're gone. You're defended. Very effective, very efficient. The problem is when that archer turns around to shoot the king, that turns from an antibody to
Very different.
defend you, right? To an
That's very
auto
different.
antibody which attacks its own people.
Mhm.
There are hundreds of checks and balances, even cells designed to keep you from attacking your own body. But what's
Mhm.
interesting, the most common antibody, and this is just a theory I'm running with right now. And if anybody listening wants to run a study together and like collaborate, I need a lab, I need a biologist and a microbiologist. These
Mhm.
antibodies, they're not necessarily autoantibodies. They can be produced against fungus, parasites, mold, stress, even ibuprofen, methotrexate, Imuran, the drugs that we use to treat IBD in
Mhm.
hospital can
Mhm.
actually produce these same antibodies. And one of the theories I'm running on right now is that one of these antibodies actually attacks neutrophils. Well, neutrophils eat like Pac-Man. So my theory is, what if this thing it ate, a protein, a toxin, whatever it is in the belly, it can't digest it because it was never biologically supposed to because toxins are new. What
Mhm.
if these antibodies are attacking what's in the belly and the neutrophil is caught in the crossfire? It's a bystander. But we have to kill what's inside of it to heal the body. So it's not truly autoimmune. It's not attacking you, it's attacking something else. And
Collateral
so
damage. Hmm.
collateral damage. And I would love a biologist or a microbiologist to help me actually take these antibodies, these neutrophils, put them under a microscope, split them, and see if it attacks a cell or its belly. That's a whole other thing. But
Hmm.
these three layers, genetic, autoimmune, and unknown, now that we understand this, to say, wait a minute, the whole rhetoric my doctor has been convinced of and told me of doesn't have any legs to stand on. Now I can go into what can I do to fix it because I can't blame my genes and go, oh, well, I'm still sick. Or if I do go into remission and then I relapse, oh, well, I told you it was just genetic. No, you missed some layers and you're sick again. We have to get more layers out. And
Yep.
then, with that being said, I'd love to go into the reversal process.
Let's go into so I first of all, yeah, it you need to write a book called It's Not Your Genes. First of that would be perfect. It's not your genes.
Yeah,
Because
or F your doctor, whatever. Yeah.
that could be the subtitle. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I just that oh my gosh, that is the standard line. I mean, most doctors won't say it's idiopathic. I did have a doctor tell me I've had Hashimoto's for, I don't know, maybe 19 years, a long time. And in the beginning, a doctor said it's idiopathic. That means we don't know what it is. And he was sweet. And your doctor's an idiot. He was just making it funny.
I love
But
that.
but we don't really hear that very often in the medical office, doctor's office. We hear it is your genes. And so that's a way to put a lid on it and send the patient out the door and keep things moving quickly because we know 15 minutes is all you get.
More like seven, yeah.
Yeah, 7 now, right? It closes the case. What's your genes? I don't
Hmm.
have to talk about it anymore. Neither do you. Goodbye. We'll put you on some medication and we'll see you, in 3 months, 6 months, whatever
Yeah.
that may
And the
be.
medications to the tune of 20 grand a month.
It's insane. It,
Mhm.
and as you were saying, like what else is it doing? It's simply suppressing the symptoms. So it's turning off the check engine light. But what else is it's allowing that blister to rub more and more and more and now become chronic and run down that spectrum. But anyhow,
Yes.
so let's talk about resolution as as
Let's do it.
you set us up.
So what we have to look at, there's if we look at detoxing, right? Because we know we're toxic, we're deficient, or we're infected. That's really why we get sick. So we have to look at the process of detoxing. Now, I want to separate this because most of us think, well, if I go on a fast or I do a liver cleanse or these 3-day detox juice cleanses, I'm detoxing. There's a difference. Detoxing is collecting your trash.
Mhm.
Drainage is how we bring it out to the curb. That's the exit doors. And there are 7 main drainage pathways in your body. And we have your liver,
Mhm.
gallbladder, and bile ducts are the top two that are most commonly affected with bowel disease. You have your lymphatic system, how things are moved and transported around the body. Of course, you have your bowels, which are again affected with IBD. You have your kidneys, you have your sinuses, and your skin. These are how things exit the body. These pathways are often clogged up. So we go through this detox, collect all the trash, and then it can't get out. And then your body just sticks it in another room. So you wonder why you feel sick detoxing or why you get headaches or migraines, your bowels worsen when you're detoxing because you're moving it around and you're not getting it out. And so your body has to hyperreact to it and your inflammation goes up. We need to open the top two things I see all the time with bowel disease. Liver and the gallbladder bile ducts are sludged up. Now, this is either due to toxins or even parasites can physically block these tubes. In fact, there was a recent video that went mega viral. It was from, I think it was the New England Journal of Medicine. Forget what it was called, but they actually scoped this person's bile ducts and they found these liver flukes. Like this looked like a little manta ray swimming around inside their liver. It's a physical organism blocking these tubes. And you wonder why you're not moving toxins. So we have these issues that plug us up. And so the first thing we have to do is what's called drainage. Now, whether that's supplementation, there's lots of ways to drain. Actively sweating, movement, like that's what moves your lymphatic system, supplementation for your liver, whether it's burdock, dandelion, tudca, TUDCA, super powerful supplement, imperative, absolutely. But also, we need to, it's slowly, I'm not saying do this on your own because it's dangerous, but binding. because these toxins are moving and mobilizing and it could make you sick. So we do have to work with a gentle binder. So that's going to be universals like zeolite, bentonite clay, which again can be rough on the gut like sandpaper. Typically, a humic or fulvic acid can be more gentle. Chlorella. We can use modified citrus pectin, okra powder, even certain probiotics and like Saccharomyces boulardii can be binders for certain toxins like mold. They're very beneficial, but we need to
Yeah.
drain, get things out first. It's like if I have a cup full of water and I have to pull this thing out of the bottom of the cup, if I reach my hand into a full cup, it's going to overflow. You're going to get
Mhm.
sick. So I have to empty some of the water out first, and then I can go in there and start moving things around. And that's what
Yeah.
drainage does.
Very good. Yeah. Yep. So you're basically it's kind of I also like to think of it like a clogged sink. When you
Yes.
scrape your after dinner, you're scraping your dishes and you're rinsing them off before you put them in the dishwasher, but your sink is clogged. So you're getting the dishes clean. However, the sink now is full of gunk, and that's what
Yes.
happens with our body, which would explain this is something that's so helpful for people to know. It explains these symptoms that you just may think are kind of weird and hard to pinpoint like why you're getting them, like chronic acne. Like you said, your whole back was covered with acne. Well, your drains were clogged. So your
Yes.
body is trying to push these toxins out any way it can. Your skin
Exactly.
being one of them.
Yeah. And let's beat that analogy of the sink to death. Imagine you're cleaning your dishes in constantly dirty water. That's
Yeah,
what you're doing to your body if you're
that's
not
a
getting
great
things
point.
out, right?
Yeah,
And that's what we have to consider drainage. How do we clean that and get it out first? Nobody wants dirty dishwater all over their dishes.
right.
So,
All through their
what,
body. Hmm.
right? Totally. And so once we get them, there's different iterations of the 5 R's we call them, and everyone's going to have a different terminology or phraseology. But the point is, they kind of come back to the same things. The first thing we have to do, the first R, and I'll run you through them, is remove. Then we
Hmm.
replenish, rebuild, repair, rejuvenate. Now, you might hear reinoculate, you might hear rebalance. It's all kind of in the same vein. But the
Yeah.
idea is the first R is to remove. You
Hmm.
have to remove the problem or problems. If you're surrounded by toxins, if there's mold in the home, if you live next to a farm and they're spraying pesticides, you're drinking from well water that's infected. Whatever your issue is that's toxifying or infecting you has to come out. You got parasites in your body, they got to come out. So we have to remove the problem number 1. The second step, we have to replenish our nutrients. Because I mean, remember, deficiencies are the first or one of the top reasons we get sick. Some kind of
Right.
deficiency. So we need sunlight, we need nutrients, micros, macros. In fact, if you think about nutrients like building blocks, right? Your house is on fire. It is constantly burning down or falling apart. These nutrients are what your body needs to continue putting it back together. But if you don't remove the problem, you're trying to build a house while it's burning down. So put the fire out, remove whatever the insult is. Then we have to replenish and give your body what it needs, the resources it needs to begin healing itself.
Right.
Vitamins, minerals, amino acids, sunlight, movement, etc. The
Yeah.
third R is rebuild. Now, again, different iterations, but we have to rebuild your microbiome. It is largely affected in Crohn's, quite often in ulcerative colitis, even IBS. We have overgrowth, we have undergrowth, antibiotic usage leads to fungal issues, which is a huge part of this. These all contribute to imbalanced ecosystem. Your gut bacteria, your microbiome, we call it, it keeps everything in check. There's viruses and parasites and fungi and all these things living together in harmony. It's imbalance that leads to issues. And so rebuilding also could be rebalancing or reinoculating, reintroducing certain microbes, and we get that biome built back up. And then, of course, just like you wouldn't want to live in a house that's on fire, neither do your microbes. So when you're inflamed, your tissues are all broken down, your gut lining, you have leaky gut, there's permeations. These toxins leak from your gut, they get into your blood and lymphatic system and circulate. No wonder you have joint pain, cognitive issues, acne, libido issues, hormone issues, PMS, breast tenderness, and all these things that you get with your cycle because these toxins are leaking out to other organs. So we have to repair your gut lining as well, heal and seal, soothe and cool, or 2 mantras to kind of abide by. And then we can finally go back to rejuvenation. Rejuvenate the immune system. We often hear boost. I mean, if we go back to the 4 stages of illness, acute, chronic, immune mediated, and then we have this immunodeficiency. You have these last 2 stages. If you're in Crohn's colitis, you go to quote boost your immune system. What happens is you take these already hyperactive responses and boost them even more. And you wonder why you're getting sicker from these immune supports, immune supplements, immune mushrooms, whatever, because you're driving up the wrong pathways.
Mhm.
Rejuvenation is like a teeter-totter. It means we're bringing things back to balance. And
Mm.
if we just go to boost, you're just launching your friend into outer space off the teeter-totter rather than bringing you guys back down to balance each other out. And that's what it looks like.
That's great. That's such good stuff. I love it. And I think a lot of times when people try to fix these problems on their own, you can get out of order in how you're doing things too. So you can,
Yeah.
start taking like gut healing supplements, but if you haven't opened the drainage pathways and if you haven't rebuilt the building blocks, the foundational deficiencies, then you're either worsening the problem, as you said, like the teeter-totter, or you're just throwing your money away because it's sequential. It's circular
Yes.
and sequential, right? It's not linear, but we need to make sure some of these, you plug some of the holes in the roof first before you add to the next ones.
Yeah, yeah, the amount of money people spend. And I think that's important to understand is that if you're taking all these supplements like anti-inflammatories, curcumin, Qingdai, PRMs, all these different things to calm your inflammation, you're using plant-based medication.
Hmm.
Medications manage your symptoms. These plants will manage your symptoms. As a clinician, I have no business giving you a supplement as a recommendation unless I can identify here's the thing or things we're trying to go after, fix, repair, whatever. Here's what I want you to take, how long I expect you to be on it for, and the result it should elicit. If I can't name those four things, I have no business giving you a supplement. And so you're throwing two, three, $500 a month down the drain on plant-based medication. Like, just get the pharmaceuticals, right? At least your insurance will pay for those.
Yes, that is something I do see in functional medicine and in different practices where it still continues the pill for the ill mentality. Well,
Yes.
you've got inflammation. Yeah, let's put some SPMs at that. Let's put some turmeric at that. But if you're still not addressing the root cause. So that's
Totally.
I love your process and what you're
Yeah.
doing.
And that's the thing is you can be, well, I've got a natural, I got a holistic practitioner. Amazing. Pursue that vein. Like run after that as hard as you can. But if they're using plant-based medication, it's pseudo-functional medicine.
Yes, exactly, for sure. Now, what are your favorite functional medicine tests as you're starting to unpeel the
Mm.
layers? What do you like to start with?
That is such a good question. It really depends, right? Everyone's going to be different based on what they need. If I had to pick one test ever, I historically I may have said an organic acid test or an oat
Mhm.
because they're huge. They're amazing, great specialists like Dr. Kurt Wohler, and many use them as well because it
Yes.
tells a huge range of what's inside of your body. Um, I'm learning more again from my mentor, but in HTMA, hair tissue mineral analysis, if you
Mm,
know how to read them effectively, it can show detox, adrenals, toxic status. It can show all kinds of information and point you toward what may be going on. Another one that I'm still working to learn about, it's a huge thing. I actually learned from a colleague, Leanne Vogel, credit to her. It's called functional blood chemistry. It's how you look at blood beyond just the reference ranges, which if you're within range, you're sick anyway, because it's based on what's normal and normal is sick. But it's how to
yeah.
read these numbers like a book, where they can look at these specialists and go, here's your blood, here's what it does. And we can just see through simple labs if you got parasites or mold or whatever else it is. So it's a very, very niche aspect of blood reading. But for me, it's typically an organic acid, if at all. But my
Mhm.
preference when I have clients coming to see me, most of the time, your symptoms tell me everything.
That's great.
Because, right, your bowels, whether you got Crohn's, colitis, IBS, or the stomach bug, it's going to say the same words, right? Constipation, diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, increase, decrease appetite, acid reflux, bloat, whatever. Same vocabulary. But your body joint pain, acne, drooling in your sleep, quality of hair, skin, nails, menstrual cycles, when your pain flares up, the timing, if it's cyclical or not. All these symptoms, there's thousands of vocabulary words we can actually get from the rest of your body. So I don't care what your bowel symptoms are. It doesn't really matter because they're going to be the same. But it's what
Yeah.
the rest of your body says. And we can look at these in context, which can help us pinpoint a root cause.
Oh, that's really good. How do you identify parasites then?
So there is a laundry list Number one, if somebody has come in with something like a stool test, oftentimes, especially ones like diagnostic solutions, on the second last page, there's a marker called eosinophil activation protein.
Uh-huh.
And eosinophils in your blood, up to 30% of the time, those are going to be elevated in those who are dealing with parasites, up to 30% of the time. Otherwise, what we want to start looking at is other symptoms. So you drool or grind your teeth in your sleep. That can be a sign of parasites. If you have pain when you press on your liver, gallbladder, even your appendix, if you've had your gallbladder or appendix removed, we need to consider parasites. If you are somebody who's chronically anemic but you're not bleeding, the parasites might be eating your iron as food, for example.
Oh.
Infertility, trouble gaining weight. We can look at psoriasis, eczema, almost always comes back to parasites when tied to gut issues. We can look at things like elevated liver enzymes or cholesterol. That can be a sign of parasites as well. Yeast infections, rashes, hives, sinus issues, allergies, food sensitivities. Again, these can be connected to other things as well. It can be fungus, it could be whatever. This is where context comes into play, right? Like how many uses of the F word can you possibly name? Like 40, right? You can take that word and there's context for it. F you, F them, this is effing amazing, whatever it is. I don't know if you would bleep these, so I'll just bleep myself. But the idea is one word has many contexts. And when you put it into context, it means something different. And
Mhm.
so these symptoms, when pointed back to gut issues combined with other markers, could be parasitic in nature. Um,
Mhm.
Parasite stool tests, don't rely on them. They are not accurate. They are terrible. Your doctor's is probably 90% inaccurate, and
Mhm.
parasite specific tests might be 40% accurate at best. And that's even assuming the parasites are in your bowel. They might not be. So don't
Right.
rely on a stool test at all.
Yeah, that has never worked for me like as a clinician. No, I've never I've never seen it show what it needs to show, but no, that's great. It's you're looking at it almost as a kaleidoscope or a puzzle and you're putting those pieces when all these pieces align, then I see a pattern that shows me
Yes.
to suspect. How does mold set people up for greater parasitic
Mm.
activity?
So mold, it's really about what it does to your immune system. It's a great environment. It's inflammation. It's dysbiosis. It's all these things that mold loves. But your immune system, it's only got so many arms to sort of occupy itself and stuff it can do, wants to do, needs to do. And
Yeah.
so when we're considering what mold's going to do, think about it. If you were trying to juggle 15 different balls, that's hard with two arms, right? If you're an octopus, it gets a lot easier. Your immune system can only take so many resources and divert it. So if your gut lining is compromised, your immune system is compromised, that's prime space for infections, for example. If you have mold wearing down your immune system, and you're fatigued all the time, you're exhausted all the time on a cellular level, your body can't drain or detoxify. So your body's going to get, I mean, we have parasites living on us at all times, right? They
Mhm.
do. They live in harmony. In fact, there's even a parasite called Trichoris suis, which has been shown to help relieve some IBD symptoms. Now, I'm not saying infect yourself, but the idea is parasites can be helpful. It's all about
Mhm.
balance and harmony. But once we have this disharmony, mold creates what's called pleomorphing. So you're perfectly well balanced gut microbiome, this bacteria that's all checked and it's good and it looks beautiful. What happens is it gets completely out of whack. And so now we have disharmony, which creates more inflammation, which lets these opportunistic microbes overgrow. And so now what could be a little bit of parasites is an overgrowth of parasites. And now your body can't keep the bad guys out. But your microbiome also crowds things out when there's overgrowth. It pushes them out and says, now we don't have any room, like get out. And so through that process of elimination, your body gets rid of stuff too. So there's a lot to it. It can be a very complicated process, but it's about wear and tear on the immune system. It's about the change in morphology in your gut. It's about the holes in your gut lining and your inability to defend or protect yourself.
Yeah, for sure. That is, boy, there's so much there. And it's really helpful. When should someone start thinking? Because gut issues are, I mean, that's what we all see. The vast majority, someone always has some gut thing going on. It's
Mhm.
very unusual that someone doesn't say to me, "Oh yeah, I do struggle with bloating or irregularity or gut pain," or, it just seems to always be part of the complaint list.
Yes.
So with that, our listeners today, when do they start thinking beyond, well, that's just indigestion or normal, and start thinking, wait a minute, this might be something that I want to talk to somebody about.
Yeah, I mean, depends on where you are on the spectrum. Right? We talked about 17 to 20% of those with a Crohn's colitis diagnosis have a previous diagnosis of IBS. And
Hmm.
we know statistically, 60 to 72%, depends on the studies, of those in North America complain of some kind of IBS symptom once a week and may not have a diagnosis. So gas, bloat, pain, cramping, nausea, vomiting, acid reflux, whatever. So we have three quarters almost, two-thirds to three-quarters of the population already complaining of IBS symptoms. 20-ish% of the population have an active IBS diagnosis. So the rest of them are on the spectrum, about to be bad enough to fit into this box of diagnostic criteria for your doctor to give you a label which is attached to a med. It's like a cookbook, right? It's not critical
Yep.
thinking. It's here's your symptoms, here's the name we give it, here's the drug we give, get out of my office.
Yep.
So 70% are dealing with a symptom, 20% have a diagnosis. And then if we actually look at it, North America is less than 5% of the global population. They have up to 50% of the world's cases of Crohn's colitis within less
Wow.
than 5% of the globe. It's staggering,
Wow.
staggering. It's an industrialization issue. So we're all on the spectrum somewhere. And oftentimes, unless we recognize the importance, oh, I'm just a little bloated, it's not a big deal. It's not right now, but it might be later. And until we
Yeah.
can recognize that and accept the seriousness of these conditions for what they are, we're going to find ourselves on the slippery slope that one day you're going to fall off a cliff. You might get lucky and never, but it's not. Look, my uncle smoked for 45 years and never had lung cancer. I knew a kid in high school who died at age 15 from lung cancer. Does that mean I'm going to roll the dice because my uncle didn't get cancer and start smoking? No, I'm going to take preventative measures now. Don't take your chance. I'm a little bloated. Deal with it now before it becomes diarrhea, constipation, or worse. Well, it's only a little. I talked to a girl this week who had blood for 2 years before she saw a doctor.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
take intervention now. See
Yeah.
somebody. Just
Yeah.
know if you go to your doctor asking for preventative measures, they're not going to have it. It's the equivalent of dislocating your shoulder and them telling you to come back when your arm falls off, right? They're not going to intervene until it's severe enough for them to be able to meet the criteria, check the boxes, and give a drug. Like, how many times have you seen, Lisa, in your practice or yourself, you went to the doctor, like, something's wrong with me, like, it's in your head, here's an antidepressant.
Yep. Come back when come back when it's worse. I mean,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
honestly,
Look
yeah.
at your blood markers or your blood sugar or your TSH, whatever it is. Well, we'll keep an eye on it, and if it gets worse, we'll do something. Of course, it's going to get worse. It's already
They know it.
elevated.
They know it'll get worse.
They know
Exactly.
it'll get
I
worse.
mean,
They
it
just don't
always
know what to
does.
do. They don't
Doesn't
know
get
how to
better.
reverse it.
That's right.
No.
That's right.
Yeah.
So
So
how
F you guys.
so how do you work with people? How do people work with you?
Easy, super easy. I'll give you all the things and just pick one that makes the most sense to you. If you want to
Okay.
find everything in one place, you can head over to gutsolution.ca. That's gut solution, all singular, .ca for Canada. There's links to the social, the podcast, the everything. You can find me on social media at joshdech.health. And I have two podcasts available as well. One is called Reversible, ABLE. And that's, I do a solo each week where I just ramble about something you guys ask me about. And I have expert guests, some of the top in the world. That's the one that's the top 2% right now, which we're very blessed to be a part of. And I recently started another podcast for those of you listening to the Crohn's colitis portion of this. It's called Reversing Crohn's and Colitis Naturally. I have a Facebook group of about 14,000 people, and I've been doing free lives, 100% free. All the stuff we talked about today, root causes, how to do it, dealing with your mental health, illnesses, parasites, mold, what to look for, how to get rid of it, blah, blah. It's all for free on this podcast called Reversing Crohn's and Colitis Naturally. But again, it's a lot of things. So just head to gutsolution.ca and you can find all the links for everything there, 100% free.
That is wonderful. And I will have all of that in the show notes as well. But thank you for sharing that with us. You bring so much wealth of experience and knowledge and help to the table. And I really love what you're doing to help people. Guys, if you have IBS or Crohn's or colitis or just chronic gut issues, check Josh out. You also have a lot on YouTube as well, right? So
Yes.
there's so much, Josh offers so much help, free help, as well as people can reach out and work with you. thank you
course.
for coming in today. I have really enjoyed this conversation. It's been so much fun.
Likewise, Lisa. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks you for having me. Getting my words all mixed up. But I appreciate being here. It's been a pleasure.
It has been fun. Hey guys, thanks for joining us, or thanks for joining us. And until next week, stay pretty well.